morning. If you want to see how we made this 3-table workstation for the corner of a workspace, stay tuned, because that's what we're going to do today. Oh, welcome to another Memphis Monday. Memphis Monday 321. Today we're going to make 3 gray tables. I don't know if you remember, been some time ago, 6 months, 8 months ago, we built a at-home worker, a little workspace with 3 white tables, and somebody saw it and said, gee, I'd like that exact same setup. Well, you know, your human nature kicks in, and you know, and you're flattered, so you say, all right, I'll do it. So we're essentially going to make some similar tables. We're going to cover some different things, and I think it's going to be pretty good. In any case, let's knock off the chit chat and get to work. Well, since I have 3 tables to do, I need 12 legs, obviously. So what I'm doing, these are the blanks I'm cutting out for the legs. What I'll do is I'm going to glue up six legs at a time, and how I do that is every other board will get glue on one side, and that will spit out six legs in each glue up. Good furniture often uses poplar. It works real well. It's very workable. Doesn't have any knots in it. Paints well. It doesn't stain or anything like that, but for actual structure, if you get painted, you're going to do something painted like this table, it's going to be gray. So I want something that will paint, and poplar will definitely paint. You just saw me cutting that piece of plywood down the middle, and I talk about this some, but here on the plans, you can see that the width is 26 inches, which means the plywood section, because it's going to have 1-inch trim, plywood section is 24 inches, and the length is 50 inches. So my plywood section will be 48 inches. So by strategically designing this thing and keeping it within the footprint of the standard wood sizes, I can get 2 tabletops out of 1/2 sheet of plywood. Here's another little takeaway. Don't be a slave to your plans. This right here is 24 1/4. Now you need to ask yourself, does it matter if it's 24 1/4? I mean, if this has to fit in a particular place or meet up with a different part or some other compelling reason. But in this case, the fact that that's 24 1/4 is meaningless. So if there's no reason to cut something, don't do it. This big sled here is about wore out. It's not square anymore. It's sloppy in the tracks. But the deal is, I've used it so long that I'm used to it, and I'm almost afraid to give it up. And this might be a takeaway too. If it's practical, try to set your work up real close to your saw so you don't have to walk back and forth when you're doing things, especially production jobs like this. I've got to put trim on all 3 tabletops, so that's, what is that, 12 pieces of trim I have to cut, and you can waste a lot of time walking back and forth taking measurements. Here's what I mean. I got here's the tabletop here, I'm putting the trim on, and my chop saw is right behind me. So all I gotta do is just turn around and cut it. I was just thinking about that that takeaway. Let me tell you the truth. If your biggest problem is your shop is too big, that you have to position your tools to keep from walking around, then you don't have any problems and you don't need the takeaway. I remember some of the shops I've had that were about as big as a closet. For that matter, I remembered my shop when I lived in Hawaii was just a lanai in the carport. Lanai is just a Hawaiian word for like patio or deck. I got all that trim on. We'll deal with that in a few minutes. I let it over here to dry. So I put filler in some of the cracks and stuff. This is going to be painted, so I'll be able to sand all that smooth. I broke down all the legs we had stacked over here, and what I'm doing now is cutting them to length. I have a little stop block there, measured to about 30 inches. Not 30 inches, not about 30 inches, but 30 inches. So what I do here is nip off the end so I have a nice clean end, and I'll push it down to the stop block and cut it off at 30. Well, there's all the blanks for our legs for three tables. And over here, these little things are the little stubby blocks. They're milled from exactly the same material, exactly the same size. And these will be for our table jigs. And I think I'm going to make 2 table jigs. instead of just one. I think we're using the same table jig we used last time. I'm not sure. This job's kind of tedious and repetitive, but not only is it tedious and repetitive, if you mess it up, you have to make another leg, and that can set you back. Now I take it loose from my tapering jig, and that little wedge we just cut off, we'll replace that. And we flip it right over on top of that wedge. And take up the space we just cut off of it, and dog the whole thing back down again. Okay, here are the two wedges we just cut off. Undog the piece. And that first that wedge we put in there is right there, so we get 3 wedges for each one. Okay, at this point, this is where you can mess it up. You got to know where the inside corner is. These things are tapered on the inside, and so this corner right here is going to be towards the inside of the table. You're going to put a carriage bolt, a hanger bolt right in that corner. Now you're going to be tempted to save these wedges, but don't do it. I mean, you can do them for, you could use them for, shimming windows and all doors and all kinds of stuff, but I've saved them before and never used them. And you just build up a bunch of junk. I got you close up here because I want you to see this. Each one of these is marked with a red line right on the corner. And that marks the inside corner. That's the corner where we'll put the hanger bolt later on. I guess we're fast forwarding a little bit here. Here's the legs. We just finished tapering. I went ahead and painted them. What I did is I screwed into this board so I could stand them up and paint them at my leisure. What I'm doing now is painting the other parts. Because believe it or not, the other parts are kind of almost finished, because we did the tops, and all we have to do on those is paint them. And I'm going to paint the wood for the frame. I'm painting that also. It's not cut the size yet, but that don't matter. Isn't this paint wonderful? I'm being facetious. They brought it to me and said they brought big can of paint and said, hey, we want the tables painted this color. So I was like, yes, ma'am. It don't look like any table color I've ever seen, but I haven't seen them all. A couple of folks said they like to see my mistakes, and I think this is kind of a funny one. I painted this trim board, but actually all my trim boards, I painted them, but after I got about half done painting, I realized I haven't rounded over the one edge that'll be exposed. So I have to round them over and then repaint them. But I can show you how to round over an 8-foot board on your router. I got all those parts painted. And what I'm doing now is building the table jig. And I think I've said this before, but this table jig is not necessarily a requirement, but it makes really good tables and makes them reproducible and very convenient, and they're easy to build. Table jig is sort of like building the table before you build the table, but I'm going to attach the table jig directly to the tabletop using pocket screws. I'm building a table jig, and I've got to make a jig for the frame that goes around the center box drawer that'll be in here. And the key to that is these sides have to be parallel, and the thing can't be a rhombus either. It has to be perfectly square. So what I've done is I cut a piece of scrap plywood that's the exact inside dimensions here, and so that I can perfectly form this square box. I should have put these pocket holes in before, because I had to move my pocket hole jig over here because this thing's already assembled, so it's hard to Now just attach this to the tabletop. Now I've got to get this center piece of plywood out. This is just my spacer. Attaching this frame together is a good job for drywall screws. They go in easy, they come out easy, they don't tear the wood up very much, they rust like crazy, and they break off when you put them in. Don't use them for anything unless you know their weaknesses. You don't use them for anything for construction, but for a job like this, they're perfect. Now I put this board here in all the way across so that my frame would be perfectly aligned. Now I need to cut out this center section here where my drawer goes in. I'm going to do it with this dovetail saw. These things cut real good when they're new, but as soon as you abuse them, even slightly, they begin to deteriorate. Well, that thing's too far gone. Let's try this thing. On this kind of table, you don't want the frame, this part here, to come right out to the edge of the leg. You want it set in between 1/8 and 3/16. So you have that little gap between the edge, the outside of the leg, and here. That's what I'm making provisions for now on the table jig. So to make that happen on the table jig, just get you a piece of plywood, cut the size, and that goes on the inside of your jig. That will give you that spacing you need for that detail. This happens to be about 3/16. Building the table frame for the smaller table, what I'm doing here is putting X across the piece. It's a square table and a square frame. So my theory is, I should be able to set that frame right down on here and line the corners up with these lines in the corners, and it should be centered. Okay. Here goes the theory. This is what I mean. See how that line comes right out of that corner? It's like that on all four. So that means that my frame is centered on my tabletop. Now I'll try to keep it centered as I put some screws in it. These screws are really helpful when you're putting the table together because they keep everything from moving around. So you got a nice solid, surface to work with. We got our table frames, our table jigs made. This is the table jig for the small table, and this is for the larger table. We're going to make 2 of the larger tables. And over here is our painted stock for the table frame. So I guess we can get to work. I went ahead and put that little table together because I thought of a real good idea. I took all those pieces and put together stuck them into the table jig. They're just sitting in the jig. Getting ready to be attached. And I thought it'd be interesting if we take our second table and put it together without the table jig and just sort of contrast the difference between the two. So let's do that. Start off by putting this side on. The table jig is real easy. Just put the pocket holes in. The pocket screws. Everything's lined up, plumb. You can put this whole table together in 5 minutes. Since we don't have our little nubs to work off of, I figure that corner of this post, of this leg, should be about 3 1/8 from this front here, and 4 1/4 from the side. Now to square this frame piece up, all I did was eyeball it with its 3 3/16 right up against this front leg here. So go down to the other end, 3 3/16 here. So square to this. I might put a layup line. Okay, now let's go ahead and attach it, see what happens. Same deal here. We're lining everything up off this leg here. So right next to this leg, it's 4 7/16. So down here, I want it to be 4 7/16 also. We'll actually attach these legs as we go on this non-jig side. What I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and put the rest of these screws in for our table with the table jig, because there's really nothing to do. All you got to do is put screws in. All the alignment's done. All the measurements are done. Everything's plumb. It's foolproof. And since I put all the screws in, I might as well put the legs on. It's the easiest part. I got the legs on this table. This is the one with the table jig. Let's go over and finish this one. I'm using part of the table jig here to size the drawer opening. I don't really feel like I'm cheating, because if I was building this without a table jig, I would still make some kind of spacer in there to make sure that area was square. So I don't think I'm cheating. Well, we got our two tables built. We built this one without a table jig, and we built this one using the table jig. Now what we got to do is build drawers that are going to fit in here. We're running out of time. I'll go ahead and build the drawers. I'm going to try to spice up the looks of these a little bit by putting an oak drawer front on the front. I'll bring you back when we do that. I got the drawer boxes in there. Now we'll make these frames. I want to spark the thing up a little bit. It's a little drab. A lot of different colors go with gray, and one of them is cherry. So I got this cherry wood here. I'll make these drawer fronts about 17 inches, and then I'll route around them and we'll attach them. Try to position these things on here without getting too much stain all over the table part. What I'm doing is I'm just putting a screw. I'm just putting a screw right in the center there, just to hold it in place and then I'll take the table down and put some screws in through the other side. Now I'll try to take the table down without wrecking them, and we can properly attach those drawer fronts. What's the best way to do this? Apparently that isn't, because the door's opening. So I'm just taking some pocket screws to attach the drawer front. This cherry is real soft, so these pocket screws go right in. And then pull out this temporary screw. Then we can put our knob on. First thing I want to do is drill this hole. And I use these pre-scored adjustable bolts here. You feed them through, and then you can bend them off. And once it's at the sides, screw your knob on. Well, there's our tables for Memphis Monday 322. They're going to be sitting in a corner like that with the little square table being the center, and then our work tables will splay out against the opposing walls. Okay, that's it for Memphis Monday 322. Well, I just did the summary video, or a shot there where I showed the project, and I called it Memphis Monday 322. But you guys are used to me messing stuff up like that. But anyway, that's it for Memphis Monday 321. We built 3 gray tables. We built one of them with a table jig, and the other without the table jig. It takes a little longer without the table jig, but you can do it fine without it. I just do it because it's so much easier and more accurate, and, and so forth. We put cherry fronts on drawer fronts on there because we wanted to spark it up a little bit because it looked kind of bland. And I think we made the tables a little taller than the last ones we made. But anyway, pretty fun project. Except for the production line aspect of it, when you have to make 12 legs, 3 tops, and you got a lot of production repetitive stuff that's not any fun, but that's part of the adventure. Like, favorite, share all the stuff to you on the internet, but most important, make sure you're back here next week for another exciting Memphis Monday. Thanks for playing along.